podcast is about sleep and the effect that it can have on your mental health, and is presented to you by Rachel, that's me, hello, and Tim.
Hi, that's me.
Who are peer support workers within the Wellbeing Service. Joining us today will be Eleanor.
Hi everyone.
Who is a psychological wellbeing practitioner within the Wellbeing Service. So today's podcast will cover what are peer support workers, what are psychological wellbeing practitioners, sleep and our mental health, sharing peer support workers' lived experiences of managing sleep difficulties alongside managing their mental health. We hope that you come away from today's podcast with an understanding of how sleep can affect your mental health and get some ideas of strategies to manage sleep difficulties. So just to introduce peer support work to you, if you've not heard of peer support workers before. So peer support workers like myself and Tim are employed by the Wellbeing Service, and we all have our own experience of living with mental health challenges. And the idea of our job is that we share that experience with others, along with our recovery stories, to offer hope. We use our experience of recovery to help people make sense of what they are going through and to explore what may support them in their recovery. Now, the role of the psychological wellbeing practitioner is slightly different. Do you mind sort of sharing with us what your role is?
Yeah, of course. So the role of a psychological wellbeing practitioner is to support and empower people to develop and use coping strategies in order to manage common mental health difficulties. So things like stress, low mood, depression and anxiety.
You now, so like I said, today's podcast is all about sleep. So I thought we'd start off with a little straw poll of how was everybody's sleep. So if I start, I went to bed rather early, and I was woken up at about 3 a.m. this morning by some squawking seagulls above my house that I found quite difficult to zone out, and took me a while to be able to get back to sleep. So this morning I'm kind of feeling, that sluggish kind of, I've not slept brilliantly kind of feeling, my brain's not quite working on all cylinders. So that's me this morning. Tim, how was yours?
Yeah, so I've had a few late nights in a row for no other reason than there's a particular game that I'm enjoying at the moment. Maybe not a long-term thing I can maintain, but just being aware of it is helpful.
Okay, yeah. So like you say, when we get into something and there's the feeling of, oh, okay, but I'm really enjoying this. Oh, but I should be off going to sleep. And yeah, kind of thinking about how that works, and it's something that comes along. I think anybody, at the moment when we're recording this podcast today, the Olympics is on, and it's on in Tokyo, so completely different time zone. So if you're wanting to watch it, it's that decision of, do I stay up all night and watch, or do I get up early and watch? And like you say, on a short-term basis, how that affects us, and on long-term as well. Thank you, Tim. And Eleanor, what about you? How was your sleep?
I mean, I was quite lucky. I slept quite well last night. I did go to sleep at a reasonable time, but I'm a very heavy sleeper, so I can sleep through anything. So that's good.
Interesting. And yeah, it's interesting, like Tim and I are like two ends of a scale on sleep, aren't we? So I've gone really quite early and Tim's gone really quite late, and it kind of looks like, Eleanor, you're nicely in the middle in terms of sort of managing that. But I think, just us three, it kind of shows, doesn't it, how differently sleep can kind of work, and the different things that kind of can impact and affect it. And that's just the three of us. If it was asking more people, we'd get lots more information there. So thank you. So Eleanor, I thought it'd be really helpful for the people listening today to understand why we need to sleep. So why do we do it? How does it help us? Do you mind kind of sort of sharing that with us?
Yeah, definitely. So there's many benefits to getting a good night's sleep. So just to, I guess, highlight a few of those benefits. Sleep strengthens our immune systems. So sleep helps our bodies to conserve energy, which is going to be really helpful for the immune system to use if we're feeling under the weather, or if we're perhaps trying to fight off any germs or illnesses. And I guess linking nicely to that, sleep helps to repair our tired bodies as well. It gives us the opportunity to rest, recharge our batteries. And I know we were talking about this a bit earlier, if you do go to sleep with perhaps a graze or a cut on your body, likelihood is that when you wake up the next morning, it started to scab over or heal. So sleep really is a healing process as well. Just a few more benefits. So I've talked about the physical benefits of getting a good night's sleep there, but sleep also helps our brains. It helps us mentally. It helps us process thoughts and memories. So when we're sleeping, we go through different stages of sleep. One of the stages is called the REM stage. So REM just stands for rapid eye movement. And in the REM stage, our brain is actually very active. It's where we're doing most of our dreaming. And so in that stage, it's also helping us process our thoughts and memories from the day before. And just finally, sleep boosts our overall well-being. So, when you wake up after a good night's sleep, you feel better, don't you? You feel ready for the day. Whereas, waking up after a poor night's sleep, you're going to feel groggy, irritable, perhaps low in mood. And I'm sure that's something everybody can relate to. So lots of benefits.
Yeah, it's definitely what I can relate to today. So like you said, I had that early night because my body and brain were so tired. But because it's been woken up, really gruesomely early and didn't really get back to sleep and didn't get that quality in, you have just described how my brain is functioning or not as we record this, Eleanor. It's feeling groggy. If I'm trying to type something today, it's not being spelled correctly, or I'm not really coordinating myself properly. And you just think, goodness, that's just really one night's poor sleep. How that has an immediate kind of impact on us, and the difficulties that we can have, and like you say, in terms of processing thoughts and memories, there's often that suggestion, if you're dealing with a problem, why don't you sleep on it, think about it in the morning, and see if a solution has appeared. So it's really interesting. Tim, is there anything that you'd like to sort of add to those things there?
For me, I think it's kind of being mindful of how long I can do a thing for. Like this week, I've been happy to stay up a little bit later, just to do something I enjoy, and I haven't necessarily woken up feeling lower or ratty or more tired. And that's because I know that during the day, as long as I stick to my other sleep hygiene things, I don't drink coffee after 12 o'clock, and I try not to eat any later than sort of 7 or 8. But even if I do go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning again, the time I am asleep will be restful, so I can probably mostly make it through to 5 o'clock today.
Well, let's hope, Tim, and like you say, it's like, if you were doing this as a long-term thing, you'd kind of perhaps look at it differently. Right. But like you said, you've got your sleep hygiene, and I know we'll go into a little bit more about that a little bit later on. But yeah, it's to me, it's just really, really interesting how much sleep can have an impact, on your day. And I'm kind of thinking, out of the three of us today, it's going to be Eleanor who's going to be feeling the best, because she said she's had that peaceful sleep. She's gone to bed. She's woke up rested, and you and I are kind of like, we'll probably touch base later on to see how we're getting on. But it's like really interesting. So what we did, we asked the rest of the peer support workers within the team, actually, have they had any sleep challenges? Because from what we've already discussed, sleep issues actually are really quite common, and we've got a variety of different things that the guys kind of shared with us. So Tim, would you mind kind of letting us know what sleep challenges the peer support workers have faced?
For sure, and this really speaks to how common these problems can be, I think, because everything we're about to talk about is something I've experienced at some point or another. Waking up too early, either waking up with anxiety or worrying, which can make it difficult to get back to sleep. I've totally been in that place where I've woken up and immediately a thought's entered my brain that I've become fixated on, and it just kind of circles around, and I can't get back to sleep, which will incidentally feed into the next one, which is napping during the day, because I haven't slept, I'm going to be exhausted, so I'm going to want to nap during the day. And when I was unwell, this could vary from anywhere between an hour up to 3 or 4 hours, which is then going to feed into not being able to sleep that night. And one of the worries I used to have was that I'd worry that I wasn't going to be able to sleep, which would keep me up. And I think there's an odd kind of irony in that. And not being able to get off to sleep because of racing thoughts, not being able to switch off and relax, and not being able to stay asleep. Again, it's something we've experienced before. And then night terrors and intense dreams. Again, this used to make me anxious about going to sleep, like what's waiting for me in that world of sleep. And something I always used to think is I had to get 8 hours. Like, do I have to get 8 hours? And what I've discovered this week is that I already knew this, but 6 hours is something I can run on.
And Eleanor, is it true that we need to get 8 hours sleep, or is that a complete myth?
So that's definitely a myth. I mean, the average amount for an adult is between 7 to 8 hours per night, but that's going to depend from person to person. You know, things like age and lifestyle all have an impact.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, if we have in our head, oh, I must get 8 hours, and we wake up and we've had 6, and we're like, oh, goodness me, I haven't had 8, what am I going to do? It's actually, I've learnt to be more intuitive about my body and my brain, and kind of thinking, you know, okay, like, you know, I've lost the ability to lie in, don't know where it's gone, it's disappeared, but, you know, it used to irritate me so much to be awake at 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So annoying. But I've kind of got to the point of, do you know what? My body and my brain are telling me, yeah, you've had enough sleep now. Time to be starting the day. And once I've let go of that, you know, that thought and feeling of, oh, I must have this, it's actually much nicer, not nicer, what's the word? Much easier to deal with if I don't get hours in, you know, kind of different things. But yeah, Tim, lots of different things there, and the same as you, I've gone through all of these different things. I mean, one for me particularly is night terrors, or very, very intense dreams where, you know, unfortunately sometimes I can wake up shouting, and, you know, waking up, you know, have that feeling of what's going on. And then if I overthink the content of the dream, like you said, that then gives me worries and concerns about what's gonna hit me when I go to sleep. Do I want to go to sleep? And what I've had to do is just, again, have that acceptance of, my brain does some interesting stuff when I'm asleep. I don't need to read too much into it or anything into it. I need to look after myself when I wake up in the middle of it. So it might be some meditation, it might be some deeper breathing, you know, just taking care of myself. And it might be that my self-care needs to increase the day after. So just, you know, doing things gently, not reading too much into it. But Eleanor, are these sort of common sleep challenges that you kind of hear in your work within the Wellbeing Service?
Yeah, definitely. I do hear these types of sleep difficulties a lot from various people. So yeah, things like waking up too early and then feeling quite frustrated when you can't get back to sleep. And, you know, that's where perhaps tension and stress is going to build in your body and just make it even more difficult to get back to sleep. So it's a bit like a vicious cycle sometimes, isn't it?
Yes, you know, definitely with me and the seagulls in the early hours of this morning, because it's, you know, you're like, well, I'll try this, or I'll try that. And I thought, I'll get angry. And I thought, why am I getting angry? Because, like you say, if I tense up, I won't be able to get back to sleep. I'll just be even more ratty than I'm already feeling. And actually, it was, you know, shut the windows, put some calming stuff on, and then was able to do it. But if I'd have stayed in the whole, oh, this is so annoying, I wouldn't got back to sleep at all. So, you know, it's really interesting how common sleep challenges are. And we also asked our peer support workers, you know, so you've had these challenges, you may still have them, how did you overcome them? What kind of things have helped you? So Tim, do you mind kind of sharing with us, you know, what the guys have said about what's helped them?
For sure. So the first one that we've got was waking up worrying, and our peer support worker said that they listened to a mindfulness recording on the Wellbeing website, and that helps them to focus on the present moment, and then they distract themselves by either watching TV or getting up and keeping busy. Someone talked about daytime sleepiness, so they said that they do whatever needs sorting out in the house and then go back to bed. They set an alarm for half an hour before the children come home from school. A couple of the peer support workers talked about sleep hygiene. They've got a bedtime routine. So they get things straight downstairs, have a hot bubbly bath, get into bed, make sure their phone's on silent, and then they read or meditate. And making sure the bedroom is dark enough says that it makes a difference. The other one on sleep hygiene, our peer support worker said, was that turning off their phone at least 2 hours before bed, having a herbal tea or hot milk, having a hot bath with lavender oil, writing down their thoughts so they can empty their head, reading before bed, and avoiding TV, which is scary or overstimulating. And the final one we got was around night terrors and dreams. And what they said helps is to accept that that's what their brain does when it's stressed, and have that self-care in terms of reducing stress as much as they can after having dreams or night terrors.
Yeah, so kind of, that's kind of my one there. And it's interesting again, Tim, I'm looking at this and going, yeah, I've tried variations of all of these, different things. I mean, particularly having a bedtime routine. So at the moment, I am going through a phase of needing to go to bed really quite early, which has put my sleep routine out of sync. So, but normally it'd be like, 9 o'clock, okay, put my pajamas on, get myself ready for bed. So it means, when you start to drop off on the sofa and you lay there and you're like, oh, I'm nodding, I'm going, and then you drag yourself up to bed. And I don't know about you guys, but I will then get to bed and then go, right, I'm really wide awake now. That was fun and helpful. And, so what I've learned to do is get ready beforehand. So if I start dropping off on the sofa, I'm already ready for bed. I just need to get myself upstairs, and then generally I do get into bed and then carry on that sleep. But yeah, it's looking at those kind of different things and, having sort of routines, finding out what works for us as well, because, a hot milk for me, no, that wouldn't work. A bath, yeah, that might. So it's kind of working out what to do. And Eleanor, in terms of what you would say to people if they were having sleep challenges, is there anything sort of else that you would be able to add in terms of what helps us to deal with this?
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to your points about having a good bedtime routine, because I do think that's key to have a relaxing bedtime routine, but I also completely appreciate that can be really difficult to stick to at times. Like you were saying, Rachel, something might crop up and then your routine goes out the window. But it's also important to be patient and persistent with these sleep tips, because it can be very difficult to change old habits, can't it, and swap to new habits. So yeah, the key is to really stick with these kind of sleep hygiene or sleep tips, and just gradually build on them. And sometimes you may not always be able to stick to them, but just again being kind to yourself and perhaps trying again the next evening is important.
And I think what can be really difficult for me, and I don't know, Tim, if you're the same, is that when I've got that sleepy feeling, so I've got that sleepy feeling in like 7 o'clock in the evening, and, in my head I'm going, no, we need to stick to the routine. We need to go to, get ready for bed at 9 and sort of head to bed sort of 10ish. It's too early, stay awake. And I can try really, really hard with that, but the urge to sleep is just, I don't know, it's like primeval or something. It's just really, really strong. And, the more I fight it, the sleepier I get. And in the end, it's like, oh, okay, I've tried really hard tonight. Like you say, not beating yourself up, not having a go at yourself, just kind of using that self-care of, I've tried really, really hard. I've tried for as long as I can. but it's too much at the moment, so I need to take myself off to bed. I mean, Tim, do you sort of have experiences that sort of link to that, or not?
Yeah, I think it's part of it for me is recognizing what doesn't work, as well as what does work. So I always think that I'll only ever change anything when the coping mechanism hurts more than the solution. And one of the things I used to do when I couldn't sleep was get up and have a coffee and a cigarette. And now I'm saying that to myself now, it's obvious that's maybe not the ideal solution to poor sleep, but at the time it's what helped in that moment. And recognizing that it wasn't conducive to a good night's sleep allowed me to slowly but surely make a change that I'd sort of leave my cigarettes in the car, way too lazy to walk outside and get them at 2 a.m. So that would help to make it more difficult to smoke. And something I figured out was that hot milk, vanilla, and honey and cinnamon will help me sleep better than a coffee, which is something I'll now reach for.
Yeah, but again, we have to learn this ourselves, don't we? I mean, Eleanor, would you kind of say that reducing caffeine and sort of cigarette intake in the later evening is something that you would often suggest to people, like sort of Tim said?
Yeah, we do often encourage people to gradually reduce any stimulants. So yeah, things like caffeine, nicotine, if you can gradually reduce and get used to that, it will really help your sleep.
Yeah, and I think also, like you said, Tim, you kind of had to work that out for yourself. It was like, oh, well, I'll do that, and I want to do this. And actually, when we make those changes gradually for ourselves, we kind of then realise that's why we're doing it. This is why it helps. And it's interesting that Tim, you said about in terms of sleep hygiene, avoiding television, which is sort of scary or overstimulating. Well, when the previous sort of season of Line of Duty was on, it started at 9, it finished at 10. I'd sit there watching it through my fingers and then go, oh gosh, who is H? And, then go to bed and wonder why I couldn't sleep. And so I had to work this out myself, despite knowing. I then was like, okay, don't go to bed at 10 because your brain is too wired. And, I ended up going to bed at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And like Tim's already said, actually, when you kind of do stuff like that, it's interesting how it changes your sleep. And, previously I would have thought, 2 o'clock, that's far too late. Went to bed at 2, head hit the pillow, absolutely fast asleep, woke up at 6, only had 4 hours, but weren't they refreshing? So, like I say, lots of different things that we can sort of tweak and try. And I think, Tim, there was a couple of other suggestions from our peer support workers.
Yeah, they talked about physical activity, going for a long walk, a run or a bike ride, or getting fresh air during the day helps them sleep better at night. I can relate to that in a big way. Even just fresh air, to be honest. Working from home still at the moment, that's kind of been our lives for the last year, hasn't it? And yeah, I know that it's something I learned over the last year, that actually just stepping outside, have bare feet on grass, was relaxing before bed. And then the final one we had was around sleep environment. So a cold, dark room, having linen and mattress and pillows and etc. Sharing beds with people. So being mindful, is that the right thing for me right now?
Yeah, interesting things there. I mean, I know. I changed my pillows a couple of years ago when I realised actually how long I'd had my pillows for. And the change was immense, and they weren't hugely expensive or anything like that. They were just not so old and lumpy. And, the change to my sleep was really, really quite big. And Eleanor, in terms of sort of physical activity, is there anything that we shouldn't be doing before we go to sleep that, might kind of, we might think it's helping that actually might interfere with our sleep sort of later?
Yeah, I guess when we talk about exercise, we'd always encourage you to do it during the days rather than right before bed, because if you're doing it before bedtime, you're waking yourself up, you're waking your body up, which obviously isn't what you want right before bed. So perhaps some relaxing exercise like yoga or something might help before bed, but any kind of vigorous or intense exercise, try it and do it in the days, as that's going to increase your need for sleep at night time.
And Eleanor, in terms of people's sort of sleep environment, Like I said, changing my pillows made a big impact. Is that something that you hear from people, that actually making those what seem like small tweaks to our environment can really help?
Yeah, quite often it is those small tweaks or changes that do make the biggest difference. I speak to a lot of people who have invested in perhaps a new pillow and they've really noticed the benefits. Also, just thinking about sleep environment, it's worth thinking about the temperature of your bedroom. So quite often we do fall asleep easier in a cooler room, because it allows our core body temperature to drop, which enables us to sleep. So it's worth thinking about those small changes to your environment.
And I know for me, particularly in the summer, but I will sometimes sort of do it in colder times as well, having like that fresh air coming through, but also even in the winter, my bedroom windows are open a little bit so I can have fresh air coming in during the day. And for me, that makes a real big difference if I'm going into a room with air in it as opposed to a stuffy bedroom, and I'm not able to get to sleep in it. So like you say, it's the small little tweaks that we can make, actually when we put them all together, can have a massive impact on our sleep. And I think I'm going to remember more of this when I'm trying to go to sleep tonight. When I've got that urge to go to bed really early, I'm going to try even harder not to, and kind of try and use some of these different things to help me get a better night's sleep tonight than I did today. So thank you so much, Tim and Eleanor, for joining me for today's podcast. It's been really, really interesting. So we've shared peer support worker lived experience examples of overcoming sleep challenges. Our next podcast will be looking at disability and our mental health.
You can find links for today's podcast in the podcast notes.
If you're listening to this podcast today and would like to refer yourself to the Wellbeing Service, it's really simple. You can do so by visiting the Wellbeing website, or you can do so by telephoning us. If you're listening today and you're currently having treatment within the Wellbeing Service and would like to have peer support, then please do speak to your therapist who can make the referral. So thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. And again, thank you so much, Tim and Eleanor, for joining me this afternoon. It's this morning. See, the sleep has affected my brain, and I've totally lost the idea of the time of day. It's just interesting how it affects me. Apologies. So thanks so much for your time. And like I said, next time our next podcast will be focusing on disability and mental health. So I'll say goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.